Welcome back to episode number 4 of the No Filter Weekly. Shay, how's it going, mate?
Good, Steve. I think we're in week. Is it week 3 of lockdown of the 6 weeks
Uh,
that we're in lockdown?
yeah,
I
look,
don't know.
I
I've lost
think our
count.
audience should just assume by this point that we'll be in lockdown for a little while to go. So we,
Yeah.
we, we can discuss lockdown till the cows come home. But I'm pretty sure every permutation of that COVID-19 conversation has probably already taken
Well,
place.
because I was gonna just mention that last time we talked, I'm growing my beard out a little bit.
Yeah,
And
I can see that.
it's funny. Like I've noticed I've got some white hairs in there, and
Yeah.
it reminds me of LeBron James. He grew out his beard during I think in probably the last couple of months, he had a big beard and he had a bit of white in there. And apparently he used to do it to just show how much older he was than everyone else and he was still dominating. So, yeah, I've got a bit of white in there as well. So we'll see
So
how
is,
that
is
goes.
that is that your
Nah,
thing as well? You just want to show everyone how much older you are than them.
I'm trying to do a LeBron James. It made me realize as well that he's the same age as me. Look what he's doing. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah, it is. So, I mean, at the same time, it's like it's a good thing in a way because I feel myself getting older. 36 now, but being athletic and physical is something that's been a big part of my identity growing up. And so when people say, "Oh, you're getting old now," I'm like, man, the LBJ is like still one of the greatest basketballers in the NBA, and he's
Yeah.
my age. So if you really want to perform at that high level, granted, he spends something like $1 million a year on his
Oh, easily. Yeah.
physical
It's
fitness,
nuts.
you still can. So,
Yeah.
who else was it? Like Ryan Giggs. We talked about Man
Oh,
United a couple of weeks ago. He played until he was about 40 years old. Um,
yeah.
Leonard Copeland and Andrew Gaze from our Alley Oop show, like they played
40s.
until
I
their
think
early
like
40s.
39, 40 at least. I think Copeland played till he was 42 or
He
something,
was
right?
about
I think it was,
42. Like his
yeah,
last season, I think it was like 2014 or something like that.
it's
If not,
nuts.
later,
Yeah,
2017 potentially. So, yeah, like you can
nuts.
push it, and sometimes I think people who like, oh, you're getting on now, you gotta let it go. It's perhaps because they've already let themselves go, so it makes themselves feel better about themselves, knowing others are
That's
like
it.
on the decline.
Yeah.
um, Big week, lots of stuff going on. Firstly, have you heard of the Triller app?
No, I haven't heard of. Well, I've heard of it briefly. I've never used it or seen it, but as far as I'm aware, is it just like a US version of TikTok? It's kind of like just taking over in the US. A lot more people are starting to use it, given that TikTok's a little bit up in the air over there.
Yeah, more or less that seems to be the case. And US President Donald Trump joined Triller a few days ago, and his first video, at the time our article on the topic went to press yesterday, it had about 1.2 million views. So seems like it's getting some serious traction. I mean, obviously, with the vacuum that will potentially be left by the departure of TikTok, if that Microsoft, well, not necessarily. I mean, if that Microsoft deal goes through, then TikTok US will still be running. But potentially,
Yeah.
if a deal doesn't come to fruition, then there will be a vacuum, and potentially Triller will be right in there to pick up those users.
Ca- Cashing in, and yeah, it's interesting that obviously Trump posted something on there, and obviously the whole TikTok thing in the US is going on now, and I don't know, it's probably like what did they what was the market for TikTok in the US, like 5 billion, was it? Or I can't remember what the offers were initially, but I'm guessing by Trump posting something on Triller and kind of promoting that, maybe the TikTok value in the US is probably dropping, right? As in,
Um,
like, I don't know. It's an interesting move from Trump.
well, actually,
Actually,
it was
everything's
30.
interesting that he does these
Everything's
days.
interesting,
It's
but
like
the,
mind
the
blowing.
the valuation given to TikTok's American operations was about 30 billion
30 billion.
US dollars, which is, to put it into perspective, more or less where Snapchat is at these days. And of
Yeah.
course, Snapchat's been around a lot longer than TikTok, and that's Snapchat globally, so for their entire operation, whereas this is just for the American operations of TikTok. So that's quite sizable.
Yeah.
And then in terms of the Triller app, like this is
Have you
literally
used it?
the first time I've been to their website.
Okay, there we go.
You do you create, share, connect. Apparently, they got a bump of about 300 million downloads in the previous quarter, but it looks exactly like, from what I can see here, in my 7-second evaluation of it.
Same thing.
Like TikTok, they've even got the similar covers, similar color scheme, and also they also start with T. Coincidentally, I don't know if that was planned or not, but yeah, I mean, do you obviously it looks like there is room for another social media app, providing that TikTok goes the way of the dodo in the US.
Yeah, it's well, people are using it. It seems like you said, the uptake's there for Triller. When did it launch? I think it's probably it's actually like at least 3 or 4 years old from what I remember reading a little while ago. But it's not like it's a brand new thing, but I guess it's all about timing, right? Certain times make more users jump on, and yeah, 2015. That's 5 years, right?
Yeah.
So
well,
it's not a new app.
Yeah, 2015, 5 years, and according to our trusty friends over at Crunchbase, Triller has raised $37.5 million during those 5 years from 6 investors. They're at a Series B right now. So
yeah,
over 250 million downloads and 65 million users as at August 2020. So
yeah.
look, they must be doing something right. And I'm sure that's not overnight success, but more so steady growth over the last few years.
Yeah, it's a good place to be. I'm sure they'll probably just keep targeting the countries that start banning TikTok, right? And just jump into those countries and target all their users. It's a pretty good strategy.
Yeah, possibly. But moving on from actually, let's stay on tech for a second. There was another piece that came out this week on Apple, and the article on our site was called "Comparing Apples with Pears: Tech Giant Threatens Legal Action Against Small Business Owner." And this small business owner was called Prepare. Could you guess what their logo was?
Yeah, just pretty much a pear. If you scroll down, I think like it's a little, there we go. Yeah, pear and apple.
Yep, pear and apple. And go for it.
No, I was just going to say, it's like, I guess if you don't own a small business and have never gone through this experience, it's hard to know what it's like. But I've actually gone through that experience where I had I thought you probably remember, Steve, but I had a watch company called Winston Watches. Yep. And, we launched it on Kickstarter. We raised our funding. We ordered all this stock. We were selling to retailers. Things are going well. And then we got a letter in the mail, like a cease and desist letter from a big jewelry company in the world. I don't know if I'm allowed to say the name of the company. Maybe I can. I don't really care. It's Harry Winston. So they're a big jewelry company. And they literally sent us a letter saying, hey, you're using our name, like you're selling similar products, blah, blah, blah. To be honest, I'd never heard of them until we got that letter. And most companies, it's quite scary to get a letter like that, right? I'm sure a lot of business owners get a lot of these letters from these big companies in the world. And your first instinct is like, crap, I don't want to go to court. I don't want to lose any money. I don't want to go bankrupt, whatever. So you just want to just do whatever they say. And a lot of the time they're like, stop operating in the next 3 to 6 months. Otherwise we'll take further legal action. Yeah. So we were lucky. We had a lawyer friend who kind of helped us out a little bit. And we got to the point where we said, give us 6 to 12 months and we'll rebrand and we'll change the product and stuff like that. But I'm sure most companies would just give in and be like, hey, we'll shut down. We don't want any issues from the big companies. Because when you talk about money, and like money's not an issue for these big companies, right? They'll fork out heaps just to kind of get their way. And in this instance here, I think this owner, she put out like an Instagram post to just ask for some support and get people to sign a petition around it.
So the petition, as at press time, had generated over 70,000 signatures. So they had a target of 75,000 apparently. So according to Apple, the $1 trillion Apple has decided to oppose and go after this company, just saying that the pear logo looks too close to theirs. Personally, I think it's one of those things where now, while they're small, it's like, really, like, is this really worth pursuing and putting these small business owners in a bit of bother? But if they were to grow and get bigger and bigger at some point, maybe the likeness is something worth contesting at this early stage. But it's a difficult one. But I do recall with Winston Watches, I mean, you guys ran a Kickstarter campaign. You raised something like $50,000 in 14 days. Yeah. And then you had to basically rebrand to W
Yeah.
time.
Pretty much had to just change the whole brand. And the
Yeah.
problem was we had all this stock on hand that had the old name and old logo, but we couldn't sell it anymore. So we had
Oh,
to
wow.
during that I think it was 6 to 9 months that we had in the kind of agreement, we tried to sell as much of it as possible. But like I said, most small business owners, like it's a pretty scary thing, because I'm sure a lot of these small businesses, they're probably invested a lot of their obviously time, money,
Yeah.
Like life into these businesses. They've grown them from nothing into something, and then you get this massive company like Apple just say, "Hey, sorry, I don't care how much of your blood, sweat, and tears you put into this business, but your logo is a little bit similar to ours, so you guys got to shut up shop." So it's probably not the best feeling for these business
Yeah.
owners, and a lot of them I think it's that fear factor, right?
Oh,
It's just like,
definitely. I mean, my strategy when it comes to these types of things is to just ignore and hope it
yeah,
goes away.
yeah,
Many years ago, when I founded my first startup called Hot Desk, which was essentially an Airbnb for office space, I got a cease and desist letter. I think it was from Getty Images, because I had a blog post which just so happened to include one of their images, and this cease and desist letter basically said that they would pursue legal action if I didn't remove the image from the website. Or actually, I think it was demanding payment up front of about
oh
six or
yeah.
$700, because that's what a typical Getty image costs. And I just ignored it and it just went away. uh,
Good strategy, right? If it's not there, it's not happening if you don't know about it.
Basically, but it's interesting to note that nowadays, because it's almost impossible to track, especially if you're someone like Getty Images. You've got billions of images all over the internet, people using it at their will. How do you manage that rather than trying to send out all these cease and desist letters and hoping something comes of it? I mean, realistically, you're pursuing payment from companies. Like me at the time with Hot Desk, I was barely making anything. So, like, you're not going to get any money. If anything, the business is going to go out of business and that's it.
Yeah.
What they've done is they've launched this service where if you are a media company or if you do run a blog or something like that, you can actually embed their images into your website. And rather than just copy paste, you embed the image, and that will then have a small sort of tag underneath the image with a link back to Getty. But if you click on the image, it also takes you back to their website. So that
And is
way,
that free? Is it free to do that?
it's completely free. Yeah, we
Yeah.
actually do it on the No Filter website at the
Yeah.
moment. So, I mean, our headline images, royalty-free images, we put a few filters on them, make them look cool and on brand and whatnot. But then the images that you see inline the article, we just use the Getty embed because it's absolutely free. The challenge with that could be that, say you have some kind of a broken link or the image goes missing from Getty's library for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And then on your site, you'll just have this broken image, which doesn't look great. And you can't do much about that other than find another image to replace it with. But it's interesting to see how they're trying to battle this sort of mass, piracy, if you will, mass distribution, unlawful distribution of their images.
Yeah, the teams within these big companies must be massive. The ones just like going through the internet, going through everything, sending these letters out. Hopefully they're using some automated tools that actually just go through the internet for them and find these things, I hope, rather than spending, paying 20 people to just go online and find this stuff, which I wouldn't be surprised if they were doing that. But the amount of letters, I would love to find out how many letters Apple sends out every year or every month, because I'm sure it'd be easily thousands.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think not just that, but in the realm of, say, nowadays you've got things like identity politics, fake news, all this sort of stuff, and companies like Facebook, companies like Twitter actually have, upwards of 10,000 people manually, trawling through content, looking for something and flagging it, and more or less banning people, shadow banning people, all that sort of stuff.
That's right. It reminds me of, wasn't there a story ages ago of I think one of Facebook's outsourced teams, I think maybe in the Philippines or somewhere, where they have to look at all the really crazy, terrible stuff on Facebook, the stuff that gets reported, and it's like really like mentally scarring, some of the stuff they have to look at. But that's their job, right? They view it and then they have to decide whether it gets taken off or not. It's like, I think it's an outsourced team. I think it was in the Philippines.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a combination of both automation picking up on things and then
Yeah.
manual review. So, which is where we are with a lot of things nowadays with
Yeah.
automation. Like there is still that human element. And when something is a little bit more ambiguous, such as, is this comment unlawful? Is this comment, too extreme to the point where it goes beyond freedom of speech to just being, hate speech, as they say nowadays. Do we flag that? Do we remove this person from the platform? And then that becomes a very subjective question. Hate speech according to who? Who are you to remove this from the platform? If you're removing that, what else are you removing? And then do you start to influence the public conversation, the discourse in a way that suits your own sort of worldview and agenda? So
yeah, it's a slippery slope, right? Once you start doing it, it's like, when does it end?
Exactly. And speaking of that slippery slope, Nick Cave, are you a fan of Nick Cave at all? Have you
I
come
can't
across
lie to
his
you,
music?
but I'm not.
I've
It looks
known,
like he's been in the news though.
I've known of, obviously Nick Cave is a
I've heard
huge,
the name, obviously. Like, I'd know him if I saw him, but I've never heard one of his. I'm guessing he's a musician. I've never heard any of his songs.
He's indeed a musician. That's a great guess, mate. Australian singer-songwriter, very influential. He has influenced, the likes of, his work's actually been covered by Johnny Cash, Metallica, Snoop Dogg, ARIA Hall of Fame. He was inducted into in 2007. And if we just quickly look up Nick Cave, records sold. I just want the total records. Here we go. Total records sold. It's not telling me, but anyways, I know
What are the last album? How many selling the last album?
his most recent album. His net worth is $8 million, and his most recent album, 2019, basically looks like it hit number 2 in Australia and number 108 in the US. Certified gold.
He's crushing it.
In Australia. 108, not quite crushing it, but close enough. Anyways, Nick Cave, speaking about political correctness, he's basically come out and said that political correctness is the unhappiest religion in the world, which I thought was interesting. But his quote here was, "It's once honorable attempt to reimagine our society in a more equitable way now embodies all the worst aspects that religion has to offer and none of the beauty. Moral certainty and self-righteousness shorn even of the capacity for redemption." Which is interesting because, what he's essentially saying there is, if you are indoctrinated to some religion, you do some wrong, you can always, bow at the altar, seek forgiveness, redemption for your ways, and eventually rid yourself of those sins, so to speak. Whereas nowadays, as we discussed, the other week on cancel culture, if you do something wrong, even if it was like 15 years ago, like
people will find it.
People will find it, and there is
They'll hunt you
absolutely
down.
no path for recourse, no path to redemption. Like you are done. Which is an interesting sort of analogy he's drawn.
I wonder how, like, just thinking out loud, I wonder how many celebrities are out there that are currently being like blackmailed by people who have found an old tweet that's since been deleted and have kept it. They're like, hey, like, I'm going to put this out there in the public unless you give me X amount of money or whatever. I'm sure it happens more than we actually think. We're just not exposed to that lifestyle, but
sounds like a good
I'm sure there's a
business
lot of it
idea,
going
mate.
on. I'm sure there's a lot of it.
Yeah, look, I'm sure there is. I mean, I guess it's one of those things that if that work is carried out effectively, then you wouldn't know it's going on.
Yeah, that's it.
Right. So ultimately, I guess with that kind of stuff, you might find that they'll go out and target celebrities, and then eventually it's kind of like a game of Russian roulette. They'll hit a celebrity who's like, screw it, my values are more important.
Yeah.
Do whatever you want. But then you still don't know. Like, I guess that celebrity might let it slip that they were blackmailed or make that revelation if that news came out that someone blackmailed them to keep this secret. And I actually not familiar with anyone actually saying that thus far, but it wouldn't surprise me. It's probably more so a case of people just getting off on the power that they get from finding this information, then sharing it on Twitter, and then seeing this, successful person
Yeah.
who's worked really hard to get to where they are in the world basically come undone, and giving you the person who found that information some sixth sense of self-worth based on this other person's downfall. Like, what do they call it?
Yeah.
Schadenfreude, when you get a sense of pleasure from other people's pain.
Misfortune. Yeah. It's I think the one that comes to mind is what's his name? Kevin Hart. Remember
Yeah.
when Kevin Hart, I think he was going to host the Oscars, was it, right? And then there were these tweets that someone found from I think 10 years ago. I think there was something homophobic in there or something
It was about his son, not wanting his son to be gay.
to dress to play with dolls. I can't remember what it was, but he was just the most exciting thing for him was when he got chosen to host the Oscars, I think it was, and it just got taken away from him that quickly. And I think he apologized and stuff, but then everywhere he went, everyone just wanted him to keep apologizing, and he just drew a line. And he's like, "I'm done. I'm not apologizing anymore. Like it's what it is, and I'm just going to move on." And I think that was what it was. You've got it up there, I think, Steve. But
I can't find the exact tweet,
okay.
but essentially, it was basically 2010 startup special that he was caught saying or describing his terror that his son would turn out to be gay.
Yeah.
And his intention to prevent it however he could.
Okay. And then someone found that, and it pretty much stopped him from hosting the Oscars, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
People don't talk about it anymore, but at that time, it's probably like just destroyed, like obviously that dream that he had, right? Very, very quickly.
Which was interesting because last year or earlier this year, I've kind of lost track of time in this post-COVID world, but when Ricky Gervais hosted the Golden Globes, I think it was the 5th time, and he just came out and absolutely just was the most non-PC MC ever. And he was like, I don't care. This is my 5th and last time. I'll say what I want. And he's been very outspoken about, not going to jail if you say something that offends people. And he also said something the other week whereby it was, he's sick of hearing comedians say that you can't say anything anymore. And he basically said, no, look, you can say anything you want. You just need to be confident enough in your own skin to deal with the consequences of saying these things, more or less. But
with the backlash. Well, he's always been like that, right? He's always just kind of said whatever he wants.
Oh yeah.
Like it's the Oscar. What does he host? Is it the Oscars or
it was the Golden Globes?
Golden Globe. That's right. Yeah. So every year whenever he hosts that, he's just always saying something inappropriate, which is just him, right? So he's probably used to it. Whereas a lot of these other comedians, they've got these images in the world, and they don't want to tarnish their images. So they're probably really, I guess they really analyze what they talk about during their sets now, as opposed to a few years ago when they wouldn't have.
Yeah, well, I've got some of the quotes here from Ricky Gervais
here we go.
At the Golden Globes ceremony. Apple boss Tim Cook was amongst those targeted. Yeah, so Gervais described The Morning Show, which a new Apple TV series, a superb drama about the importance of dignity and doing the right thing.
Yep.
Well, that a superb drama about the importance of dignity and doing the right thing, made by a company that runs sweatshops in China. That was just one of the many things he said that night, just to completely. Tim Cook was sitting in the front row as well at that ceremony.
Well, and the thing is, they're not getting him to host it thinking that he's not going to say that stuff, right? They know what he's going to do, and it's all part of it, right? It's all part of the ratings, part of the show.
Yeah. Well, to a degree, I think he did definitely step. He also more or less pointed the finger at Hollywood in saying that they will only speak up once everyone else speaks up, and how for years they kept their mouth shut despite knowing what Harvey Weinstein was up to. And I think it speaks volumes that people will only reveal there's a term for it called preference falsification, where you will more or less, in public, say what you think is the safe thing to say, but privately you might believe something else. And so a great example of that could be that 2016 US elections where on the polls, it was like, yeah, man, Hillary Clinton's, she's won it. She's by far away the favorite to win this. Secretly, though, half of America turned up to the polling ballots that day and voted for Trump. And here we are 4 years later, right? And who knows? It looks like there potentially could be another 4 years because at this stage, from my external observations and modest understanding at best of US politics, it looks like Joe Biden isn't really presenting much of a formidable competitor or opponent for Trump, but we'll see.
Like based on history, like during difficult times, like whether it be a recession, things like that, generally, from what I remember reading, people like presidents, prime ministers, they generally don't get kicked out and someone new comes in. Like during those kind of difficult times, challenging times in the world, they usually get voted back in as well. So I think that's probably on his side as well.
Yeah, it's kind of like a double-edged sword. Sometimes in times of difficulty, you want to see change, but more often than not, you stick with what's familiar because forcing change at the top during times of difficulty just adds even further uncertainty to the world as we know it. So it doesn't bode too well for Democrat supporters, but we will no doubt discuss that as the election gets closer. Moving away from politics to sport, NBA. Let's talk about the NBA. The Phoenix Suns, unfortunately, despite going 8-0 in the bubble, despite Devin Booker making the first team, despite their coach winning Coach of the Bubble, they did not make it to the playoffs by a solitary point.
Yep, that's it, right? It literally came down to the final shot in the Portland game. So, I think Brooklyn Levert, I think it was, he had the final shot. He had a pretty okay look. Like it was a weird one. There was 20 seconds left. They were down by one. And rather than just going for a quick shot, getting the lead and then leaving it up to Portland, he just let the timer go down and he was just like, got to take the win or take the loss. And he got an okay shot, but unfortunately it bounced out, which is pretty sad for Phoenix.
It was indeed sad for Phoenix.
For yourself, Steve, big Phoenix, lifelong Phoenix fan. Phoenix is up there in my top 4 or 5 teams as well. Yeah. I wanted to do well, especially because like they never do well now, right? It's like I don't know how many years since they last made
about
the
10 years, 10 or 11 years since we last made
it's
the
nuts.
playoffs. Yeah, back in the days of Steve Nash and Sean Marion and all those guys. It's crazy to think that all those players are retired now. It just seems like just yesterday, but I guess that's testament to life. Life just passes you by in a way. But yeah, I mean, who have you got in the run to the finals this year?
So I think I reckon the Clippers are probably the team to beat just because they've got an awesome team. They've got people that have performed at the highest level. Like Kawhi Leonard, he's probably easily, if not the best player, probably in the top 3 anyway. So they're definitely up there. Yeah, I think the Lakers, like with LeBron James, with his white beard and everything, he's always going to be up there. He usually starts performing when playoffs come around. But to be honest, given they're in the bubble, it's a different environment. Usually during these kind of seasons, you don't get the favorite winning. It's usually someone else coming up. And even the Suns, right? They go to the bubble, they win 8 in a row. During the normal season, when life was normal, they had a crowd, all that stuff. They couldn't even win. I think there was a stat where Devin Booker, the first time he won 4 games in a row as a Phoenix Sun was during the bubble. Like he'd never won 4 great games in a row before. So like crazy things happen in the bubble. So I wouldn't be surprised if one of the underdogs or someone in the middle tier ends up winning.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, before the playoffs, I probably would have said the Lakers, but they had a really terrible run in the bubble. Weren't they like 3-5 or something?
3-5, and they don't seem to be playing too well either. So yeah, like I said, it's anyone's game. But when you've got superstar players, like that's who you want during this time. That's who you want during these unknown kind of games. You want those superstar players holding your team up and getting you to the end. So it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds.
Yeah, definitely. We'll be interested to see how it unfolds. In other news, Barcelona, I think, has put up their entire team for sale. This is going live on our
Oh,
website
geez.
today. Yeah,
What do you
except
mean? As in like the club selling? Like what do you mean?
as in no, as in putting up their entire squad for sale, because they've had a pretty ordinary season, and after
Yeah.
their recent loss to was it Bayern Munich, they put up their whole squad except for four players, and I'm sure those four players includes Lionel Messi, Clement Lenglet, Frankie De Jong, and Marc Andre Ter Stegen. I probably ruined all of those pronunciations, but
Uh,
Messi's also said that he wants to leave Barcelona, even though they've
wow.
put him in their list of players to keep.
That's interesting. I remember, I don't know, is Barcelona still awesome? Because I remember what, 10, probably like 5, 10 years ago, they were just like winning every trophy. Pretty much the Spanish international squad was made up of like 80% Barcelona players. Like it was just, they were just dominating.
Yeah.
And then I remember they had Zlatan Ibrahimovic was there for a year as well. Like they, they brought superstars in. And I'm surprised, like I don't follow the soccer as much as I did years ago, but I'm surprised they're still not dominating with some of those names you mentioned.
Yeah, well, I mean, last year, 18-19 season, they finished top. This year, they finished close second to Real Madrid, second only by 5 points. Won their last four of their last 5 games. So I guess it's a question of standards for
They've set
Barcelona.
them,
So
yeah,
finishing
yeah.
second is nowhere near good enough. And their recent loss to Bayern Munich in the European Champions League came in, I believe it was the quarter finals.
Ah, geez,
Yeah,
look
it
at
was a
that.
quarterfinal,
8-2.
8-2, which is a
Wow.
pretty big humiliation. Kind of reminds me of the 7-1 loss that Brazil endured at the hands of Germany the 2014. Was it the
Oh yeah,
2014
yeah.
World Cup in
Rings a
Brazil?
bell. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and
Jeez.
that just forced this sort of reflection by the Brazilian Football Confederation, and it forced them to come back stronger. And I guess Barcelona losing 8-2 on such a global scale in one of the world's most coveted tournaments has probably just forced them to do some soul searching. And still though, you get to the quarterfinal of the Champions League, finish second in your
It's
domestic
pretty good.
league. Most clubs would be quite happy with that, but not
Yeah.
not Barcelona.
I remember I used to wake up at probably like what 3 a.m., 4 a.m. to
Hmm.
watch a lot of these Champions League games, and I don't do it anymore. But some good old days, waking up early, watching the football game or soccer games, and yeah, I used to follow Barcelona a little bit. It's all I'm one of those people that follows. I like to follow teams that have quality players and a lot of talent because, like it's always good to watch teams that are perform and do really well. It's more enjoyable than watching a crappy team, right?
Well, yeah. Although I spent a lot of my 20s on the terraces at BT Connor Reserve, which is home to the Preston Lions, Victorian football club, grassroots club. They used to be part of the National Soccer League, and the quality, dare I say it, was not all that great. But there was something endearing, something charming about going out to these local clubs, maybe 3 or 4 thousand people in the crowd at best, where you kind of know all the fans, you know all the players on a face by face basis. You don't really get that romance anymore. I find with a lot of the professional leagues where everything is
Yeah,
just so slick, and you look at say the A League or even the
yeah,
AFL where everybody shares the same stadium, so you don't really
yeah,
get that feeling of home team, away team. I don't know. I
yeah.
feel like a lot of that romance has been lost.
Yeah, and I think generally, if you do look at sports like the Australian Football League, AFL, it's people follow. They don't follow teams because they live in an area or like it's their location. They just follow the team that has the best colors or the colors they like or whatever it is, right? So I think it's different. I know you would have been to some games in the UK, like the
Yep.
not the Premier League, but probably what's the league underneath?
Champions League.
Championships.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah,
Championship.
yeah. So they're pretty loyal fans, and it's really based on location, right? Everyone in a certain location goes for the team from that city or that town or whatever it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
which is very different to here. But we were talking the other day. We were talking about some of these hooligans. There was what was that movie called again? Green Street Hooligans. Great
Yes.
movie.
Yes.
Some of
With
these fans out of control. But it's just passion, right? These fans, they grow up as kids. They follow these sports teams because their dad or parents followed it as well, and it just kind of gets passed down generation to generation.
yeah, Green Street Hooligans with Elijah Wood from
Elijah,
Lord of the Rings, and what was his name in Lord of the Rings? Frodo.
Frodo, I think, yeah,
Frodo. Yeah, and Charlie. What was his surname? Charlie Hunnam. Hunnam, who has also gone on to star in a number of other films over the years.
yeah,
Most recently, the name escapes me, but nonetheless, great film. But I actually went over
great.
to the Den, Millwall's stadium over in South London, which is more or less a stone's throw from West Ham Stadium in East London. And these two clubs absolutely hate each other. I mean, both areas traditionally were kind of working class, socioeconomically disadvantaged. And I find with areas like that, perhaps there's not as much opportunity for the kids coming up. So they derive or they invest a lot of their energy into football because it's a source of power for them. It's a source of identity, of self-esteem, getting out there on Sunday, going out to their rival
Yeah.
club and maybe engaging in a little bit of biffo. When you haven't got much in your life, I mean, you're going to seek out that identity somewhere. And similarly plays out in, parts of Italy as well, especially in the South. Some of those clubs, I mean, you've had you look at the local stuff here in Australia. If someone
It's
lights up a
nothing,
flare
right,
in the
compared to that.
A-League,
Yeah,
there's all this sort of conjecture about it. But in the south of Italy, you literally had police and fans being stabbed to death during these riots. And in one game, I'm not sure if it was Inter versus AC Milan, but there was one of these missile flares that was shot from one side of the
jeez.
stadium to the other and actually pierced through someone's chest and killed this fan on the spot. So it's pretty insane, pretty brutal what goes on in some of these
Yeah.
leagues.
It's nowhere near that anywhere. Any sport in Australia. I guess it's a different place we're in, obviously, right? With different culture and attitudes and all of that. But
Yeah,
It's
yeah, it's
it's
quite
actually pretty friendly here. Like you said, you get one little thing happen in the crowd for say an AFL game, and it's front page of the newspaper. They talk about it the whole week, and it's just like two fans maybe getting into a punch on or something, right? And it makes the news for the next week or two.
yeah. Although I also always found that because the press here, particularly your news limiteds of the world, have quite a few interests in AFL. Whenever there was an incident, no matter how small, in the rival code of soccer, aka
Yeah,
football, that would just get blown up out of proportion, like next level. And
yeah.
even my team, Preston Lions, they had quite a few incidents over the years, but they're always nothing too serious except for a couple of them, and that would always just be front and center. Every single news outlet, radio, newspaper, TV, Channel 9 News, Channel 10 News. And I was like, and at the time, I also had a very close relative, actually my brother-in-law, who would work at the MCG, and he'd see all manner of fights, and he would say, none of these things are ending up on the news. So I
Well, that's the thing. They
wonder.
wouldn't be, right? It's a completely different level to probably some of the stuff you saw at the local grounds, right?
Definitely, definitely. So on the topic of sport loosely, I mentioned Joe Biden earlier running against Donald Trump. He's recently appointed Kamala Harris to support him. So if he goes on to win the presidency, she will be the vice president. But just reading through this article on our site, where it is found that she is a supporter of men playing in women's sports, providing that they identify as female. Now, this is obviously a very delicate issue, but I'm going to put you on the spot and get your thoughts.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's obviously a very delicate issue, and whenever I look at something like this, I kind of have that empathy. I'm like, all right, how would these certain people in these shoes feel if they weren't able to, if they identified as a woman, for example, and they were a man? Like, how would they feel if they weren't able to play these sports? Obviously, it would be difficult if they were passionate about it, but I'm kind of giving you the politically correct response here. But if you look at men's sports versus female. Obviously, there's different strength. Like, you know, you don't get female tennis players playing male tennis players because, obviously the men have stronger serves and things like that. So it puts the women at a disadvantage and so forth. So very hard to answer your question, Steve, but I think it's something that I know it's been talked about a little bit over the last, probably more so over the last year or so. I've heard of some players who, I think transgenders who have tried to play in, I think males are trying to play in the female sport, but I don't think it's gone ahead. I think it's still obviously that gray area. Like I said, it's very difficult to kind of answer a question like this. But it's something that there'll be more and more news stories around it. Yeah. It's just a matter of how it kind of plays out and what people feel comfortable with moving forward.
Yeah. Look, and just to clarify, her support of this was based on her supporting or co-sponsoring the Equality Act in March 2019, which essentially included measures that would force public schools to allow biological males to compete in female-only sports as long as they identified as transgender. And, I'm probably going to be less diplomatic than you when it comes to answering this question. I think despite what some corners say, there are clear differences between men and women, or biologically at least, when you look at strength, power, speed, all these types of things. And I think it would be doing a disservice to women's sports, which has come such a long way in the last 10 to 20 years from a time when there was absolutely very little interest in it to, the WNBA. Women's tennis is as popular, if not more popular than men's tennis. You've got the W League for the footy here, was it the WAFL as well? And you're seeing this
AFLW, yeah.
AFLW, and you're seeing these sports get promoted everywhere and really encouraging women to participate. But if you foresee a world where there's a lot of men participating in these sports, absolutely dominating them, then what does that do for women who are born biological females in terms of their appetite to participate, to give it their best, when they're just going to be outcompeted by what are essentially biological males? And then that's the bigger question, like are we doing a disservice to women's sports? And should there not be a third category for transgenders? Or should biological males just compete with other males? And is that not the most fair, prudent thing to do? And look, it is a difficult one because if you feel like a woman, then perhaps you want to compete with other women. But at the same time, like, it needs to be fair. Like, we have drug testing and all sorts of stuff to make sure that the playing field is even, and that if I'm boxing you, Shay, that I'm not high on Dianabol and stanozol and all these manner of substances that are going to make me perform at a much higher level. But it's no different if I am biologically a male and you're biologically a female, but I get to compete in the same class as you. So
it's a super gray area, and like I said, whenever there's these unknowns, it's something new. Like, people just don't know how to take it, how to change things. Do they need to change anything? And they make really valid points. Actually gets me thinking, are there any sports out there, like professional ones, that compete at a high level where it's your mixed teams? Like, I know there's, like, in the Olympics, there's probably like volleyball and stuff, those mixed teams where it's men and women on the same team playing against men and women on another team. But it probably doesn't happen too much, right? I can't think of any other sport that would have it apart from your volleyball or sports like that. Obviously, you've got your mixed netball, but I don't think that's an Olympic sport or anything.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with anywhere that is a thing. I mean, socially, it's quite a big thing, mixed netball, mixed soccer and stuff like that. Professionally, not so much. And
maybe that's where things could go. Who knows?
Potentially. But I've just pulled up an article on the USA powerlifting organization. So they, back in March, I believe it was, they banned transgender women from competing. And they've actually come under attack by certain corners, not all corners, of course, for discrimination. But powerlifting being one of those sports where quite obvious, the correlation between being a male and being able to lift a heavier weight versus being a female. I mean, it's not like it's tennis or something where you could see a pretty competitive game between a male and a female. This is straight out strength.
Yeah, but if you think of it this way, would the weightlifting corporation. What were they called? Like
I think it's USA Powerlifting.
Yeah. So would they have cared as much if it was a female who identified as a male trying to compete with other females? Oh, sorry, with males. Like, do you know what I mean? So obviously they're at a disadvantage as opposed to being at an advantage, right? So I don't know. Like, would that be an issue?
I think it perhaps would not, because you're essentially putting yourself at a disadvantage if you are a female wanting to compete in men's powerlifting, because you just made it exponentially more difficult for you to actually win.
Exactly right. But if they're banning the other way, they should ban this way. You know what I mean? It should just be a blanket rule, right?
Well, I think it's just transgender in general, which just captures men who have transitioned to female and females who have
and vice versa.
transitioned to males. Yeah. And one of their comments here was that through analysis, the impact of maturation in the present naturally occurring. I'm just saying a bunch of stuff doesn't make any sense here. But they've said significant advantages had by males include, but aren't limited to, increased body and muscle mass, bone density, bone structure, and connective tissue. And these advantages are not eliminated by a reduction of serum androgens such as testosterone, which is what one goes through when they go through that conversion therapy as such, and your body, your hormone balance shifts quite a bit. So, yeah, it's an interesting world we are living in at the moment. A lot of And I guess this is one of those things, again, going back to preference falsification earlier, like the person on the street will tell you something to your face, but behind your back will perhaps harbor a very different view. And I think I would rather just be forthright in the argument rather than live in a world where people are too afraid to say what they truly think.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a fair point.
I think that with that, we've more or less come to the end of this installment of the weekly. Have you been following any of the podcasts we've been putting out before we wrap up, Shay?
Yeah, obviously following, what do we have? The Alley Oop Show. You've got your Battle of the Bands podcast. And I think how many episodes now? 5, is it?
5 episodes
published. The fifth one came out today?
We've got another. Yeah, the 5th one came out yesterday, and we've got another 3 in the can, scheduled, ready to go. So we're publishing those on a weekly basis.
Is that an 8-episode series, the first one?
It's looking like a 10-episode series, but all those episodes are quite short, so between 10 and 15 minutes. So they're nice little bite-sized episodes, experimenting with the format at this stage. And if anyone listening to this, if you've got any ideas for where you want to see that series go, maybe it's like a Madonna versus Lady Gaga, or Tupac versus Notorious B.I.G. Like, who do you want us to profile next? Which battle of the bands would you like to see us explore on that show? Write to us, tweet us at the No Filter Network on Instagram, or tweet us. It's not really a tweet on Instagram, or tweet us on Twitter at the No Filter Net. Parting words of wisdom, Shay.
Stay happy. There. I think during just times like this in the world, like, you look at positives. I think media just focuses on all the negatives, the fear. Just focus on the things that make you happy, and just enjoy them, because it's not often you get opportunities like this in your life where you probably get to spend more time, or for some people less time, but for me more time with like your family and stuff, and just enjoy life.
Oh, it's beautifully said. Stay happy, focus on what you can control, and listen to the No Filter Weekly podcast. Until next week.
See you, Steve.
See you then. Cheers, mate.